and welcome again to Trialogue this week. My name is Ruth White and I'll be your host for this evening. And we have with us three fabulous panelists who will now introduce themselves, starting with Dalian, please.
So I'm Valentin Carter. I'm from the Northwest Synod. I'm one of the missional discipleship mentors working in Lancashire. I'm also on the team of Green Apostles with Roslyn and with Kate Gray.
Thank you. David Turner.
Good evening, I'm David from the National Synod of Wales Youth Representative, and I'm also the Green Apostle for the Youth Exec. But my church background is of ecumenical, with all five sponsoring bodies being the Church in Wales, Baptist, Methodist, United Reformed and Presbyterian Church in Wales working together.
Thank you, David. And David Coleman.
Hello, I'm the environmental chaplain with Eco Congregation Scotland, which means I'm a minister that the URC has given full time to Scotland to stir things up in a green sort of way, and particularly encourage any local church that wants to develop their life, their worship in an environmental way.
Thank you. So we've got three panelists, three possible opinions, and one big topic for the evening. It's a time to come together to explore and to learn from each other. And we do hope that you watching, whether it's live now on YouTube or later in the week in small groups or by yourself, we hope that this will encourage you and challenge you and that you will enjoy it as well. So let's start by praying together. Creator God, you made our world, it is yours. Help us tonight to explore our role in taking care of your creation. Give us a new sense of awe and wonder at the world around us, and guide us as we explore how to be good stewards. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. So just to remind those watching that there are two separate things that you can get involved with this evening. The first is a Going Deeper resource. It can be used during the session and throughout the week as you continue to think on these things. And the link should be below us now on the YouTube screen. So that's the Going Deeper resource. Also, we would love it if you got involved in this conversation. This is your conversation, young people. So send in your comments as well as your questions for the panelists. And you can do this on Slido. The information is also on the screen now. So just to remind us, we're looking at how the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. But what is our role? And we're using Genesis 1 mainly, and a little bit of chapter 2, where it finishes the story of the creation. We see how God spoke the world into being in 6 days, resting on the seventh. And at each stage we see in Genesis 1 that God says it was good, or in some translations, God was pleased. And by the last day, when God created human beings, God says it's very good, or he's very pleased. God gave the earth to the people, telling them to take care of it and be good stewards. But it seems to us that over the past few months in lockdown, we've been seeing the impact of humanity on creation. We've seen how, if given a break from our interference, the earth may revive itself. So this might play out in our conversations tonight. But over to our panel. So the questions that we sent you for some preparation, first of all, was what are the most important parts of this passage that possibly teach us about creation and our role in it? So a nice short question to start with, and we'll go to Dalian, please, first.
Thank you, Ruth. So I was a teacher for 20 years and I'm a visual learner myself. So I asked Ruth if I can show a picture. Just to explain it better for the people who are like me, a visual learner. So I hope it will be in front of you on the screen. I think that there was a real paradigm shift in the last few years. And the first picture you will see, I call it ego. And ego is really where human beings thought they are the gods over the creation. And I think the word dominion is really blamed for that, because they thought, or human beings thought, they are special, they are more valuable than the rest of creation. Then the move went to eco, and there was awareness of we being stewards. And with stewards, there's also a few maybe problems, because stewardship say still that the human beings has an extreme valuable role, and we have a responsibility, but it's not just our role. And then the paradigm shift to theo, and the theo say that actually we have a responsibility as human beings, but God is still God, and we are not God. And God can still bring new life, more than any one of us can, in creation. So I think in the last few years there was a real change in the understanding, because I think the word dominion was misinterpreted over many years, and it was misinterpreted in the sense that we thought we have to rule over creation. I think now it's more about, we also say that we are made in God's image, and I think that is now more understanding of a role in our being, and not in more in our doing and not in our being, in the same image of God. So that was also a shift. And I think the most important thing for me is that we are part of the creation. We're not the summit of creation. And that reminds me of the word Ubuntu in South Africa. And it means I am because we are. So it means that I'm just a part of this creation. I'm not the God. I'm not the ruler. I have a responsibility. I'm in the image, and I have a role to play in God's creation. And for me, it's also very important to remember that, and I have to thank Rosalind for opening my eyes to this, where God said after everything he created, he said, and it was good. And after he created human beings, he didn't say that. But on the day of rest, he said, and it was very good. So we are part, that was kind of the completion. And it's to look at the whole of creation, not just human beings.
Thank you. So for you, verses 27 and 28 were coming out to play there a lot from Genesis 1. David Coleman.
Well, you've started off picking out some very good bits and pieces. I think what people keep tripping over is what role we have. And again, this word is very picturesque word, dominion, which comes in into our language in this sense with the King James Bible and its predecessors. I know if you sort of get on the internet and you look it up, you find this idea of being set over, being given responsibility for. But at the same time, look the whole chapter. The sun's there to rule the day. The moon's there to rule the night. This is a participative sort of governance. We're not by any means the only people, the only creatures with authority. I certainly, from this one page in the Bible, and of course there's another 1,000 pages as well, and I really want to emphasize that. we have a special role. But we also are reading this ancient Hebrew scripture as Christians. And it's, and that's something special. Jesus says, look at the kings of the world, the rulers of the world, who basically trample all over everyone. It shall not be so amongst you. So there's not only the value that we're taking from an ancient text with wonderful deep insights, but also we're reading this as Christians through the lens of Christ. So we have a special role, but it's absolutely not that of dominating, trampling. And God remains in charge. God places us as creatures amongst creatures to help everything happen well. And that's what we're there for.
Thank you. Di, your thoughts?
So, yeah, sort of expanding on both of those ideas really, is the fact that I find it interesting how everything was made and then we were made in God's image and God's likeness. Almost to me says that we have more ability to impact the world than others, such as the animals and things. And then that comes across the interesting thought of there's the two ideas, what we can do and what we should do. We can make a big change in this world, but it's how we do it that matters. If you look into energy and how we get that, and we've mined to get the coal, and then it's gotten harder and harder to get to. And sometimes you've got to think, why are we still looking for this harder thing when God has given us the sun? It's utilizing what we've been given by God and using it in the best way for us and for the world to continue to strive. And it also impacts the idea of to what extent does modernization have to incorporate urbanization? Do we have to turn this world into a concrete jungle, or can we work side by side with nature? And I feel that's what we should be doing, is working with nature to build ourselves up, but build a world up with it in the right way.
Thank you. Interesting start to the conversation. I just want to remind people watching that they can send in their comments and questions for these panel members, and you can do that on Slido. The information is on the screen now for you. So the next question we sent you was, what are the most challenging or difficult parts of this passage for Christians to apply, both generally and possibly in the current lockdown situation? So is there anything that was tricky in there for Christians potentially? And we'll go first to David Coleman, please.
What's tricky? You see, I mean, this is a beautiful poem and story of how things came about and how things perhaps should be. We are... Something happened there. What's difficult? Well, what's difficult is taking our time and looking at it and seeing what status it has in how we live our lives. Seeing it again through the whole lens of Christianity. There's some, what the other David just said, about working with nature. The far end of the Bible, we have a picture of a city, and in the Old Testament they hate cities, but nonetheless the Bible brings cities back to, and the city is full of trees, and the city is a place where you can wander around and be healthy. So I think what the great difficulty here is that people, if they hear environment, they just go to this page and they stop there. Where there's, as I said, a thousand more pages to deal with, and God, surprise, surprise, works in the context of the environment in God's relationship with us. So Genesis is a good start, but we need to take it further and not just get stuck with it.
Thank you. And do feel free to do that this evening, panel. Use Genesis as your springboard, but feel free to bring in the rest of the Bible.
Yeah, you know, we are talking here as people attached to a church.
Yes.
And a church is much richer than one page of the Bible.
Yes, thank you. Di.
Yeah, so when you look at Genesis 1 and you see what's challenging, completely ignoring the massive argument between literalists and creationists and all of that, because I'm not going into all of that detail, I find the most difficult part is God spoke and these things happened. All he did, he just spoke, and that's what he said became reality. And that begs the question of, if God can do that, what's the point in us trying to preserve the earth, because he can just speak and it will happen again?
Okay.
And then you look into lockdown and you think, I'm shielding, and I'm thinking, well, the furthest I can go is my garden. How much of an impact am I actually going to make on this world by going into my garden? I say my garden, my nan's garden, I'm not living in mine. And then you can dwell on this a bit, and it came to me the thought that if I can go into my garden, I can plant seeds, plant flowers, plant trees. And to the world, that's going to make a very small impact. But that small flower, which is full of nectar, will make a big impact for that weary honeybee. That little tree sapling, you give that 20 years and a bit of care, and a bird can have a nest in it. And it's these things to us might seem little, but again, it's the possibilities of we can do these things and we should do these things so that those that can't can also enjoy them. A squirrel can't find nuts if there's no tree to make the nuts. And a honeybee can't pollinate anything if there's no flowers to pollinate. So it's, to us, it's nothing, but to them, it's massive. And I feel that's the thing we've got to look at, is not look at, well, God's so powerful, he can do this, but think we are quite powerful and we should be doing this. We should continue what he's done in our own steps.
Thank you. Thanks, Di. We have had a question come in, so I'm going to go to Dalian, and then David, I will give you opportunity to come back.
Yeah, I agree totally with David that we shouldn't just cherry pick Genesis 1. We have to read the whole Bible. We have to see it as a whole, of the liberating and the resurrection of the gospel and the whole of creation through the whole Bible. And then I agree with Davidton as well, because I think we think in COVID-19 that we can't do anything, but actually it brings us back to that point where we as human beings almost feel like creation is is unfinished without us. But in COVID-19 we realized that actually creation carried on better than anything else. It was only the human beings that suffered. Creation actually blossomed and flourished without our intervention. So so that just shows again that we are not the dominions. We are not the people who have to rule it. The rest of creation can carry on without us. But we still have a role to play. And I think the role is to stop ourselves for the damaging things we do to creation. I don't want my teenagers to listen now, but it's almost like when a mom goes into their room and say to them, you have to tidy your room. And really, they don't have to tidy their room. The only reason why they have to tidy their room is because they live in it. Yes. And that's how we are with creation. We think we coming in and we making farms and we're making land and all that, and we have to intervene to control creation. But really creation, nature doesn't really need us. But my children shouldn't listen to this because they still have to tidy their rooms. So I think that is maybe, and then still, for me, the misinterpretation of dominion is a big, that the church misunderstood it for many years, and I think we have to re-educate ourselves on that word, and remember not to exclude God own activity in the world, not thinking we are the gods in the world. But there's absolutely plenty opportunities in COVID-19. I myself did eco audits with about 4 or 5 churches during this time, and they all got eco status. So I'm quite excited because we have now the time, and we did it over Zoom. I mean, there's so many things just to say to people, use Acacia as a search engine, because every time, I think it's 42 times you use it, they plant a tree. And I think COVID actually made us more aware of nature, because people started to go for walks, they worked in their gardens, they planted things, they nurtured things, and there's a whole new awareness of nature where we just used to rush through nature. So I'm actually very excited. I think we can do so many things in this COVID-19 state of the world.
David.
Okay, yeah, I mean, the great thing about conversations like this is that somebody says something, you think, in particular, David Turner was talking about God and the sort of character of God that we get out of this story. And and the character we see straight away is someone who chooses partnership, that chooses to share authority, that chooses, yes, to set up responsibilities, but also things have moved on. This is a story of the beginning. We have filled the earth, but not just us, the other creatures are told to fill the earth as well, of course. We've reached that point. What do we do next? But overall, there's this partnership thing. We're not the only rulers. We're not the only creatures. We're not the only things that are good or have the potential for good. God, and this carries on remarkably again through the book. You get to Noah's Ark. Noah builds the ark. God shuts the door.
Yeah.
There's partnership all the way through, and that's why this dominion thing is such a rotten way to read what our role is.
Thank you, David. And it's a good reminder, actually, that we're not on our own tonight in this conversation as well, because we've had some comments and questions come in for you, panel. So the first one's from Victoria, David. And she says, do you think that Christians have a special calling from God, perhaps over the rest of humanity, to protect the world? Do you need me to read it again? Do you think that Christians have a special calling from God, perhaps over the rest of humanity, to protect the world? Who would like to answer first?
I would say, I'm going to sound like a politician now, not answering it directly, but I do think if we say we are disciples of Jesus, we have to be Jesus-shaped. And if we follow the whole Bible, it is very clear what our responsibility is, and it's clear how God feels about this creation. So I think as disciples, it is part of our calling, and also, I mean, I think a lot of people forget that ecology is part of one of the missions. I mean, it's the 5th mark of mission. That say to strive to safeguard the integrity of creation and sustain and renew the life of the earth. So it's one of the 5 marks of mission, and I think churches forget that. They often focus on social justice. For me, is part of this mission as well.
Yes.
but they focus maybe on the short-term things. And I mean, we can't blame each other, but specifically in COVID-19, we will focus maybe on the short-term things like food poverty, but then forget about the ecology, because for us, we see it as a long-term, and we don't see the impact directly. But yes, I would say it's one of the 5 marks of mission, and as Christians, that is it. That is our responsibility.
David or Dan?
Dave, yes.
Sorry.
You're ready to speak, Dave, so go ahead.
The one thing I love about stewardship and caring over the earth is you look into any religion you want to, and they're all going to say, look after the earth. They might argue on different points, but every single religion says about look after the earth. And very much so, if you look into the Church of Latter-day Saints, they're very much for protecting the earth. As are some religions actually built more on it, so they believe that we have a connection spiritually with the plants and with the earth. And I feel it's not so much Christians should be doing this, it's all people should be doing this. It's a case of we are all have the ability, and it shouldn't be you need to do it for God, you should need to do it for yourselves as well. We need to respect what we have, otherwise it's the old saying of this is why we can't have nice things, because it's us. We've got to look after what we have and make it better. And the idea as well, and I love this idea of hedonistic utilitarianism, of the greatest pleasure for the greatest number of people. Now, if you look at that in the correct way, to get the greatest pleasure for the greatest number of people would be to make it a good, sustainable, healthy world. Because if you have a good, sustainable, healthy world, then you're on the right track of being happy, aren't you? You know, you live in a nice house, you're going to be happier than if you live in a cardboard box. You live in a nice, fruitful world, you're going to be happier than if you live in an urbanized, industrialized wasteland. So it's a big part of the mission of the church, but it's a big part of just humanity as a whole, I think.
Thank you. David?
Okay, glad you brought up happiness and joy. And, you know, Jesus says, I'm come that my joy may be in you and your joy may be full. When I'm, you know, working with churches and they say, you know, how can we, if you like, bring our prayers out into the open in what we're doing in saving energy and making everything look nice and green. The joy has to be there, because joy is what sustains us. So, you know, doing good needs to, of all the things that you could choose the thing that makes you happiest, that sustains you. God is above all at the moment. Having done the creation, God is a sustaining God. So, you know, what will keep you going? Another thing, again, have these thoughts as you say what you say. You say steward. People like that. I'm fed up with steward. I've had enough of steward. Steward is somebody who looks after other people's property. But what we have in the story we're looking at tonight is God talks to all the other creatures, talks to the earth, talks to the, you know, the sun and the moon. And this is the great new impetus that comes probably from the Pope, actually, that he's brought back the idea, which is there all the way through the Bible, that the way to approach creation and fellow creatures is the way you approach other people as persons. Talk not, they are subjects, not objects. So we are partners. We are, care of creation is our family business. It isn't something, it's not about a bit of property we've been employed to look after and then we clear off. And Jesus has got stories about the people who clear off as well. So be partners, don't just be stewards.
I want to remind, Di.
Sorry, I do still like the term steward, because I don't feel it's my earth to do as I will, because it's not my earth, it's all of our earth. We are all sharing. None of us have pure ownership over the earth. We are all sharing of the same land. And it's, if somebody decided to throw a load of paint over my garden, I wouldn't be very happy. And it's kind of like, I can't do that over my garden either, because someone else might not like it. And we should all work together to make it a better place. It's kind of like being a caretaker. You can take pride in what you do, looking after something, and not feel it's yours, but it's everyone's. So I feel we are caretakers of the earth, just maintaining it to keep it nice. And we are stewards, but at the same time, we do have a little bit of, we can take pride in it, but it's not ownership. It's pride for what we have and can share.
You see, I find that's just far too comfortable. Far too comfortable. If you're you have relatives. Can you do exactly what you like with your relatives? No, you can't. You're not stewards of them. You might be carers of them, and they might be carers of you, and the earth is a carer of us. So again, pardon me, but I think we need to go way beyond that very, very comfortable idea of steward, which came out of people's very proper reservations about the misinterpretation of dominion. Right now, with the earth being torn apart by human activity, we need something more, which you cannot escape. You have to look it in the eyes.
We've got a question here that's come in that possibly relates to what you've been talking about just then. I just want to remind people watching that if you send in your questions or comments, you can do that anonymously. That's absolutely fine. But do feel free to tell us where you are and who you are as well, so that we can say hello. So one of the questions is, as a human race, which is growing in number at an increasing rate, can the Earth's resources sustain our accelerating population? It's a multiple question. And can we balance our needs with the eco needs? And finally, should the human race work to slow down the pace of growth in our numbers? So Dalian, can we come to you first on that?
Sure. That's like 3 questions. Just remind me of the first question. Shall I start with that one?
Can the Earth's resources sustain our accelerated population?
I think it can, if we're willing to share. I feel the same as David. There's enough for everyone if we work in partnerships. There isn't enough for everyone if 1 or 2 people gathered all the resources and keep it for themselves. But if we're willing to share, I come back to that word Ubuntu. I am because we are. There's enough for everyone if we are willing to share it and not misuse it and not waste it. I think that's the whole consumerism. We waste the resources and we keep it for ourselves.
The second part of the question was, how can we balance our needs with the eco needs? Feel free to jump in, David or Di.
Are you, well, all right. I get this sort of question from churches that I visit quite a lot. And they say, well, look, look at these people in other places, they have loads of children. And of course, there's more and more of us and we're burning up all the resources. However, of course, rich people burn the earth. The carbon footprint of people who are rich, irrespective of whether they're nice, green, rich people, is huge. And, there is this justice element that needs factoring in, that wealthy and privileged people have many times the impact of poor people. But we add to that the justice element there, that if you, for instance, empower and educate women, you actually find the birth rate drops off very rapidly. And if you make sure that there is sufficient medical support, so the infant mortality drops, that too slows down the birth rate. So justice has to be there all the way through. You can't just look after the earth and not take care of the justice issues that arise from being people. And again, the prophets in the Bible are onto this. They talk about basically sin and environmental devastation as pretty well exactly the same thing. And that's what they are in our time.
Di, do you want to come in there? Or?
Yeah, just on the last question, as the question stated to us, with should we slow down the population? It's a bit controversial for the time we're in, but I feel no, because that's something we shouldn't have to worry about too much, due to the fact that the earth will take care of it itself. When there is an overpopulation, it almost creates better environment for illness to spread. And then once that kills off a part of the population, we'll have a stable population number again. And then that will happen again, and when we'll increase in population, there'll be a culling of the virus or bacteria, and then it'll go down to a sustainable amount again. So I feel that is a way in which nature is working with us to make sure that we are going to be able to sustain a good population in the world. So I feel that's not something we should stress over as such. I'm not saying go out and have 102 children, but it's
good.
Yeah, it's like I feel we're not like locusts. We're not gonna eat up all of our crops and then all of us die. I feel it's more something will kill us before that happens to make our numbers sustainable again. We've
got a potentially huge question here with only 7 or 8 minutes to go, but we'll give it a go. It says this, it's quite a long question because there's a comment first and then the question. So, capitalism is a worldview which immediately puts creation underneath us and as a means to create economic wealth for human prosperity. Christians are called to be a part of our society, but also to critique it. But have we critiqued capitalism enough? How do we balance this in regards with the environmental crisis and our faith? Who would like to speak to that first? I don't feel like I want to put anyone on the spot with that one.
I feel it depends what we put our wealth towards. We decide what is the most important thing, and we put that on a pedestal, and we make that the amazing thing to have, such as back in this it was blood diamonds. But diamonds are amazing, everyone wants diamonds, they became really expensive, and it's gold. We've decided that's a really expensive metal. I feel if our mentality changes away from that and changes away from thinking coal is great and fossil fuels are great to more solar power is great and wind power and hydroelectric power is great, and put them on a higher pedestal and encourage people to buy them and get in them and invest in them, then we can sort of move capitalism to a more sustainable, more resourceful idea. And I feel that would be easier to reach than abolishing it.
Darlene, I felt you were coming in there.
As you can hear from my accent, I'm from South Africa, and I saw what capitalism did to my country and the whole of Africa, really, because we had all the diamonds, the gold, everything, and the whole world just came and mined it, and it is really, and I what David was saying, it is actually the marginalized people that is affected by capitalism the most. Just last year with CWM, I met with people from Kiribati and Tuvalu and indigenous groups from New Zealand and Canada. And for the first time, Kiribati is the island on the one of the Pacific islands that will disappear first. I mean, their government had to buy already land in Fiji, and there will be soon 6,000 climate refugees. And it was quite a shock for me to actually meet these people, because we all support this through Christian Aid, but I've never met a person that is saying to me, my land is going to disappear in the next few months or next year. And that is the impact of capitalism, because we take, and again, it's a few people that are rich, and it's the marginalized people that are affected. I mean, soon Bangladesh, how many climate refugees is going to be if the sea levels rise with 1 meter? We will have 6 million people just will die. And I'm not just talking about the people, I'm talking about the whole creation. I mean, the work that Tuvalu and Kiribati Islands have to do, and CWM do a lot, but it's all to do with capitalism. And it's all to do, and it's the marginalized people. What David said, who has the least carbon footprint, they are the ones who are affected. It is the Western world, and it is the capitalists of the world that really have the impact on these marginalized people. Yeah. So capitalism has to go.
David.
Yep, Jesus said you can't serve God and serve money. You just can't, right? Leave you to think about that, and that might be a whole other conversation. You were asking about the church. Of course, we are a small part of the world church. The world church came together in things like the Accra Convention, absolutely condemning capitalism, which values money above the welfare of people and planet. The Council for World Mission has been onto this for years. We are part of that family. And again, the world, through the communications that we're using today, is so small that you are confronted, and you are confronted with the situation of your neighbors. And if you're not, you're just not looking. Again, as Christians, Roman Catholicism is into this as well. Huge criticism of capitalism. And alongside this, even within the UK, people are saying, we have the wrong measures, the wrong targets. It should be welfare economy, not GDP, that helps us to make our decisions. So it's got to go. And there are other possibilities as well.
Guys, we've had one question that has come in that I'm going to finish with, if that's okay, because our time's nearly gone. And it seems like the perfect question to ask you all to give perhaps a sentence on. One top tip. The question is, what should the church be doing to raise awareness of the responsibility of all to be responsible stewards of God's creation? And by all, they've put in brackets, everybody, not just people of religion. So what should the church be doing to raise awareness of the responsibility of all to be responsible stewards for God's creation? Top tip, please, for the churches listening. Dalian.
Lead by example.
Fabulous. Yeah, lead by example. Thank you.
Can I develop that? Never celebrate a single Christian festival in such a way that people could imagine that Christians, and you in particular, do not care for the planet and all the creatures on it. So if you get to Christmas, do something like put a tree in a church, look at what you do and see how you can give that message without having to do special or additional things. Look at what it is that you are, your identity is. Does that say to the world, and this is developing Dalian's thing, does what you do, say, pray, sing, say that to everyone else?
Thank you. Di, last word for you.
To emphasize the ease of it, show how you don't need to change the world to make a difference.
Mhm.
You can plant a tree and that'll make a difference.
Yes.
Show how just do a little thing, and if everyone does it, it's going to be a big difference. And hopefully that takes away the whole fear factor of I'm not doing enough. I'm more encouraged. I've done a little bit. I can do a little bit more, and bring everyone a bit closer to it.
We're back to that partnership that we were talking about then. Guys, thank you so much. I personally have found that really helpful and enlightening tonight, and quite inspirational actually. Loads to go away and think on, and using that Going Deeper resource I think will help. Is there a person like you in every synod that churches can get support and guidance and advice from? Is that how it works? Is there an eco
Green Apostles.
a Green Apostle in every synod? So listeners, find out who your synod's Green Apostle is. Get in touch. Take this conversation further. Don't let this just be a 45-minute conversation in our week,
Yeah,
or our year.
It's a good way to remember that being a Christian is being an irritating so-and-so sometimes. You can enjoy that.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you, guys. I need to tell people listening and watching that next week we're going to be using the Book of Ruth, personal favourite of mine. And we're going to be exploring refugees. And that's because it will be Refugee Week and World Refugee Day on the 20th of June. So the Book of Ruth, if you want to do some pre-reading and exploring refugees. And David, you might know one of these. The panelists next week will include Victoria Turner and Melanie Smith. So we thank you, listeners, for joining us. We thank you for sending in your questions and comments and taking part in this trialogue session. And we do pray and hope that it has been useful and challenging to you as well. So I'm going to invite Di to pray for us before we close. Thanks, Di.
So Lord, we thank you for the ability to come together tonight. We thank you for the fact that we can break down the barriers. We can't meet physically, so we all do it this way. And we are actually breaking down further barriers of distance. We thank you for this opportunity. Keep us all safe, mentally, physically, through these challenging times. And allow nature to continue to take back its world. During these next few weeks, give us the strength and the ideas to further your creation and continue it growing. Allow us to plant a tree or some flowers, feed the birds, and just continue to challenge us and let us think, what's the next little step we can take to make this a better world for all? As we come with you tonight, we thank you as well, speaking through us, with us, for us, and for your Lord, for your Son and Holy Spirit, be us all, now and forevermore. Amen.
Amen. So in closing, let's all agree to go and lead the way and be irritators. I love that, David. I'm going to quote that for loads of times now. Don't forget to send in your comments and your suggestions for further trialogue debates and discussions. And it just leaves me to say a massive thank you to Dalian, David Turner and David Coleman. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and to just listen in on your conversation this evening. Thank you for your time and your energies and your passion, and for all that you are doing in our local churches. So all that's left to say is goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye. Take care. See you again. God bless.